Mr. Malachi is joining us, and he's trying to punch some teeth through. So you might hear some stuff in the background. He's just having a good time, but let's talk fly tying. What's going on, everybody? Gunnar here. Today's video is threefold, not in the sense of three flies, but this video kind of fits into like three different series that are all going on at the same time. One, I want to start a new one called Freestyle Friday. If you know me, I love to tie new things. I don't like to tie the same fly over and over and over again. I love to experiment. I have some new inspiration. I've just been having fun. I would like to have fun with you and just tying a low-key presentation option Fridays. You know, it's not going to be every Friday. I can't do that. I'm way too busy. But once in a while on a Friday, we'll do a Freestyle Friday. Second, this is Modern Musky Meat Volume 3. We covered the Musky Double. We covered the Build the Beast. Welcome to Musky Bucktail Dubbing Brush Design. That's what this video is focused on right here. This also happens to be Shank Extended Body Fly Tying. So I'm in the middle of a Bob Popovics Extended Body Bucktail Deceiver series. We're working on different ways to extend the body of flies. We've done monofilament. I'm currently doing Shanks. I filmed it. I didn't love it. I was about 95% happy with it. I want to refilm it, but this is going to touch on extended body shank design in a musky sense, not the Bob Pop Bucktail Deceiver sense, but it kind of goes both ways. So those are the three things we're talking about. Let's go over dubbing brush design for muskies, primarily focused on bucktail dubbing brush design and how this differs from a hollow fly, because you're essentially generating the same silhouette, bulk, taper, but they are very different as far as movement considerations and castability. So let's hit some pros and cons here. All right, so let's start off by comparing something like this to a Bob Pop's Beast, right? So if you don't know what a Beast is, here's a bunch of pictures. Essentially, a Beast is just an extended body hollow fly. Now, hollow fly tying. Take bucktail, you tie it in the wrong way, right? You tie it in facing the wrong way, then you fold that sucker back using thread, but you don't recompress the hair. So you're building volume through the innate rigidity of the hair fiber. The fiber's rigid, the fiber doesn't want to go this way, therefore you can kind of set the angle that you want. It's wonderful. And one of the coolest things about it is you do it kind of in staggered steps, where the spacing between your tying points is the spacing between the tips. You create this nice outlined silhouette baitfish that breathes. It literally breathes. The hair flexes under the water that is coursing around it. And you can think of bucktail as like a progressively tapered material, much like the tip of your fly rod is going to bend and react, and the tip is what breathes and moves, and it's the base that gives it its rigidity and volume. So it's like the most amazing technique for building something large in the water. But as soon as you take it out of the water, because there's nothing supporting it, there's nothing really doing anything besides its own rigidity, it collapses under the weight of that water so that it has little to no air resistance. This is what makes the Beast unbelievably castable. You do you. You're doing good. You're doing good. But bucktail tying is very technical, and it takes a whole heck of a lot of experience to be proficient at it. Like, sorry. Like, I'm talking like 100 tails, 200 tails. I'm talking about tying, you know, 1,000 bucktail deceivers before you can even kind of wrap your head around all the differences that bucktail just has, because it's a natural material with a crap load of variance. Like, no two tails are the same, and unless you've fondled like 200 bucktails, you don't really understand what that means until you've done it. But brush building, I can take a dubbing brush table like this. I can show you how to apply the materials and wind it up so that you can get consistent results. And this should take you, you know, like 5 tries or 6 tries or 10 or a dozen. Like, you know, everything's going to be unique to you, I suppose. But you should be able to learn and master brush building very, very quickly. And this takes the skill of tying from the vise, and it puts it right here at the table. All the skill is right here on the table, and all you have to do is wrap this in the round on the vise. So the skill is in the brush building, and that can be learned very, very quickly. That is advantage number one. Now, because the Beast is split up into all these small sections of hollow ties, every single one of those sections is an opportunity for you to make a mistake. It's an opportunity for you to set the wrong angle, or to not make a uniform distribution of bucktail, or to set the angles at different angles, to set the angles differently in each stack to get a non-uniform result. And typically in musky fishing, we're imitating suckers, which can be best imitated in the round. A 360-degree silhouette does it just about perfectly with a big bulky head. And a dubbing brush, because it's uniform and it's wrapped, builds a perfect, 360-degree silhouetted profile that is very accurate to the forge that we're trying to achieve, and you can't mess it up because everything is just turned. So as long as you make a brush with consistent density and you apply it with good pressure, boom, you get perfect 360 circle. Very good thing. The third thing, and I think it's a huge advantage when river fishing, is they swim nothing alike. Absolutely nothing. Even though on the outside they look the same, on the inside they are completely different fly designs. And so this is going to break into two different categories, where you have kind of the fishability of the fly's action, but you also have the castability. And so going back to the Beast, you have the most castable fly pattern imaginable, because you have all of this bulk, but the bulk collapses as soon as you take it out of the water, because there's nothing on the core of the fly forcing that hair into that position. As soon as it's wet, you pull it out, it slinks into nothing. But a brush isn't a hollow fly. And even though they look the same, they're not. The hollow technique is relying on that innate rigidity. This compromises it. As soon as you put it in a brush and you spin it up, you kink it, you get a small percentage of that hair being forced backwards, but most of it is just being layered up on top of itself, almost like if you just tied a really dense bucktail deceiver and tried to put the stacks as close together as possible. You're truly building bulk and volume through density. This isn't an illusion of bulk like a hollow fly. This is just bulk. That's how you can build the same silhouette, but the insides, totally different. And so these flies tend to be significantly more air resistant, whereas a Beast is exceptionally castable, out to like a full fly line, exceptionally castable. These have a lot more drag to them because they don't shrink down. That core stays as thick as the core is. The tips will certainly collapse down, but the core is the core, and it ain't going anywhere, and it ain't going to compress under the water weight when you pull it out of the water. That's just what it is. Now, the same attribute of that density that makes it hard to cast is what makes it exceptional in the water. That's why it's so cool, because if you think about an illusion of bulk and you bring that, let's say, cross current, it's not always looking for the path of least resistance. Anytime water is pushing on it or pulling on it, well, the hair kind of just flows with it, but the fly is never displaced as a solid object. It doesn't necessarily react the same, and in still water, you don't really get that. I think in a still water context, you should take advantage of the hollow tie of the Beast, the flare of the hair, and the fact that you're getting the swim out of the tips from the water undulating over it. But the moment you put that cross current, where you have all these different water velocities hitting it, a lot of times those water velocities, they just kind of move the hair. They don't move the fly. If you were a dead sucker or a wounded sucker or an injured sucker, the water would move you. You would have to interact with it. It wouldn't just make your tips move. But in still water, it's different. And so in a river, this is what I'd gravitate towards, because you're going to get so much more shimmy and shake because the fly can't just go through the water. The water pushes it and jostles it around and makes it move like one solid unit, because the density of the core is forced to interact with that non-compressible fluid. And so the actions are completely different. as far as the jostle, the juke, the jive, the T-bone kind of aspect. We're kind of building this on Blaine's T-bone hook, shank formula. The castability is a downside, but it's not the end of the world. That's what musky rods and musky fly lines are designed to do. You do need to fish it on a full sink so that you can actually slip it under, because it is dense. You're going to want to fish this on like a sink 5, a sink 7, some sort of integrated sink tip that's going to end in those high grain weight sinking lines to suck this thing down. Now, quick timeout before we carry down the shenanigans of Freestyle Friday, which, by the way, comes out pretty epic. We need to thank the video sponsor for today's video. That sponsor being Premier Maritime Training. Now, the owner of which is my good friend, Captain John. And the reason why I wanted to do this is because if you have ever wanted to guide in any capacity, fishing guide or fly fishing guide, and the waters you fish require a captain's license, I am partnering with my good friend to be able to get you a 10% discount on a Coast Guard class to get your captain's license. So that discount code is BCF, Brammer's Custom Flies, BCF 10 through Premier Maritime Training. Now, John typically runs his classes in Michigan and Florida. He has bounced around a little bit into the Minnesota area once in a while, in Minneapolis and Duluth area. So contact him. Sign up before December 31st. That's when the code ends. So to get 10% off, to start your future guiding business, either part-time or full-time, wherever you are at, hopefully this saves you some money and you can start taking people fishing. So that is today's sponsor. Here's all of the contact information, website, email, and phone number for Premier Maritime Training. Let's keep tying some crazy musky stuff, Black and Peacock, Musky Triple, Dubbing Brush, insanity. So I'm going to show you the brush. I'm going to show you the maximally complex version, because remember, this is also Freestyle Friday. I had this really cool idea to integrate Peacock Herl and a dubbing brush with Bucktail, and it's sick. I'm going to show you the black one, but the recipe is the same for all of them. And take it at face value, try it, apply it, have fun with it. When we wrap this on the shanks and the hooks, it's just wrapping. I'll show you how to do it on the first one. And then we'll fast forward through the rest and we'll talk about different shank builds and layouts, because the brush I'm going to show you doesn't have to be shank, hook. This is just an extended body. All we've done is taken the tying area and lengthened it. It could be hook, shank. It could be hook, mono. It could be shank, hook, shank. It doesn't matter. You put the hook where you want the hook, depending on what you're targeting. The important thing is that I have this much shank length to build my volume and silhouette, and I'm splitting that into just about equal thirds, which when you look at this table, when I flip you down here, you're going to see a tail section, a body section, and a head section. None of them are the same. Again, we're taking a fly, we're designing the fly on the table. We're literally designing it on the table in each section, respective to where that's going to be in the fly and how much volume, bulk, density, push I want in that section. Modern Musky Meat, Volume 3. I had hoped to talk through most of that, but he is literally just yelling. Aren't you? Oh, now you're going to be quiet? Oh, sure. I'm going to wrap this later when he takes a nap. We'll put this monstrosity of a brush to something like that. Hook shank style, talk about some shank stuff during nap time so I can actually hold a conversation with you guys. I will add some text to that so that hopefully that was discernible, but the point of it was to freestyle. The important aspects are really making sure the density relative, the length, the bulkhead section, how dense the hair actually is, meaning, how much hair is there per square inch or unit, length, relative to how much bulk you're trying to build, and then using synthetics with the bucktail, because bucktail's it's rare and it's precious. So don't try to build all the bulk with the bucktail because you want to save the bucktail. Synthetics are just extruded plastic. Use as much synthetic as you want, right? So use synthetic to increase the density. We have a strung fuzz head. We have a SF core. The core length and the core density is more up front than it is in the middle. That obviously there's nothing in the tail, so the tail's nice and slippery. So you have less friction, more friction, a lot of friction, right? We're building kind of this jackknifey train on the paws type system. Semi-truck locking up the brakes. You guys know all this stuff from other videos and from other tires. Peacock. I've never seen Peacock in a dubbing brush before, but that's what freestyle fly tying is all about. I thought that would be sick. Black and Peacock? Black bucktail and Peacock in a dubbing brush? Sick. Just so sick. Yeah. And then a little bit of Squimpish for length, because the hair is short. It's like 4-inch hair. It's not super premium, which you don't want to use premium hair to do this. Save your premium hair for your hollow ties. Sacrifice less premium hair that also doesn't have good tying characteristics. This bucktail was trash, to be honest with you. I couldn't make a hollow fly with this to save my life. This was not good hair, but I can make a brush out of it. I can sacrifice this to a good cause in a brush. And that whole tail might make 2 or 3 brushes. That's it. You're going to use the whole tail to do that. All right. I'll catch you in an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 or just later. I'll catch you later. We'll put that on a hook. All right. So we got a 4-aught Partridge Universal Predator X, one of my all-time favorite musky hooks. It's a staple. The 6-aught is fantastic for singles. The 4-aught makes a great trailer to tag behind it. Then we're going to take 2 Shanks. The Partridge 25mm Predator Shanks. These things are sweet, double R-bends, nice stout wire that's not overdone, not too heavy, but obviously kind of fail-proof with the double R-bend. And they are measured from inside the R-bend to inside the R-bend. So 25mm is the tying space. If you compare that to a Flyman, it's like a 35mm Flyman shank, which is measured from the outside to the outside, total shank length, not tieable area. So keep that in mind if you convert this. Let's see if he finds a nook. All right. Now the only caveat here is we still have to tie a tail in place technically. So I'm going to start my thread, put down a big old thread base all the way down, all the way back, and then I am going to super glue that thread base to the hook shank to guarantee that it doesn't slide. I am using 210 Flymaster Plus, which is not by choice. I would prefer to use mono 8/1000 probably would be ideal for this, but I'm all out. I don't have any. So we're gonna suffer through with 210. Nothing wrong with 210. It's just I don't like it as much as I used to. I am gonna come in with something not black, and that's not for any particular reason other than this tail is much nicer and much easier to work with than that kind of short, stiff black stuff, which is kind of garbage, which is why we used it in a brush. And then I already have some big old rooster Schlappen feathers that are really webby, right? Because this is your tail. This is your tail. So you want webby, thick, big Schlappen style feathers that are going to have a nice, stiff, pronounced, durable stem. You want a durable stem, or else the water weight will break the webbing off on its own. If you have a lot of webbing without a stiff stem, it's kind of useless to you, and muskies will tear it up. So stiff stemmed, good webbing. These are from Whiting. It's a Whiting, you know, pike and musky Schlappen bundle. And we're going to cake that over top, so you won't even know that there's a different color, to be honest with you. I'm going to grab it from just below the sweet spot, and I'm going to treat it kind of as a bulkheadish hollow. I'm going to spin my thread here, cord it up, make it round. I'm going to leave the butts a little bit long. And the reason why is these stiff stems, the stems are a pain in the butt to tie in. So I'm gonna suck all that slack out of there, draw that thread down as much as I can. Really make this good and tight and durable as you can without breaking that thread. We'll stand this up till we come to a place where we can weave that thread through without trapping anything, get it on the shank, wrap it forward, wrap back over those wraps, and now you've locked it all in there, which is what we want. Now I'm going to sweep that back at a pretty good angle, but you can see that nice stiff core right there that's going to force those Schlappen feathers out away from the fly and give that tail some volume. That's why we're doing a bulkhead hollow tie here on the tail. Seems like an odd place to do it. Get back up there, get back up there. But I'm going to collapse it down a pretty good bit, right about there. And we're going to get the volume out of the feathers now using that kind of as a prop and a flare. You can come and you can smash the stem with the flat of your scissors. So you take your flat scissors, you squeeze the snot out of that, because the stems are perpendicular. They run the opposite of how you want if you're going to actually get these to lay on the side and the top. I'm going to start by attempting to tent them, which I'll show you how that looks here in a second. Let's tent this guy. Oh, that was some sloppy tying right there. Sorry if you saw that. That did not look good. All right, control that up there. So if you look at these down the back, the top of it makes a pronounced V. It should look like, but the top of it, I have one feather pitched this way, another pitched that way, and I'm making a big old tent over the back, and then I'll pair. We'll see. These ones will be mostly on the side. And so the trick to getting these to lay the right way, the way you want them to lay without rotating and jackknifing under your thread tension, is to pick the right length. If you can get the right length feather where this starts to get all fluffy and marabou-y, the stem that runs perpendicular will actually flip back to flat. And then when you squeeze it with your scissors, it likes being squeezed with your scissors, and you can make a nice flat spot that you can then throw on the fly that'll have a lot of control to it, and your feathers won't wiggle all over the place and give you a hard time. The problem is when you get like a Schlappen bundle, they ain't all going to be like that. You're going to have a lot of variation in length, you know, where, you know, I don't want that much web. That's too much web, and this feather's all twisted and crooked, and this feather's too limp and twisted and crooked. And finding the right ones, it's quite hard. I go through a lot of feathers just to use the right ones. It's a big deal. Gonna come in with the same flash that I used in the brush. It's micro Flashabou, it's really thin stuff. Gonna taper the tips. Throw some right down the back, you know, get your thumbnail in there so it's not all in one spot. And then we'll take all this stuff going forward and we'll drag it the other way. Right underneath. Short stuff underneath, long stuff on top. Lovely. All right, so we're going to grab our triple brush. You can see they're all about the same size here. This is our hook portion. It is the sparsest, the skinniest, the least dense. You know, I want this tail to be slippery and skinny. And so we're going to tie this on and wind it. And I'll give you some pointers right here now as we do this. And just that applies to the next two. It really does. It's a rinse and repeat. You know, wrapping a brush is wrapping a brush. You probably don't need to watch me do it for the next 15 minutes. But it is tedious. You want to go slow. You want to have something you can pick the brush out if you need to, if stuff's getting trapped down. You are not going to hang on to this with your fingers. Grab a pair of vice grips, set that to the right density. And these are really heavy, which is nice because if you get hung up on something, you can always let this hang. You know, these weigh like 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds or something. They're not light, right? So that'll keep everything under tension so there's never any slack. And so yeah, I'll stop talking and let me show you what I mean by all this. I am going to douse this with glue, and I'll do this on the shanks too. Really want to cover all this thread that's holding all those feathers and everything on there, but I'm going to run it up the shank so that when I tie my brush in, you know, I'm going to tie in my exposed wire, going to kink it a little bit. I'm going to bring it right back to that thread ball, and I'm going to make sure it's really secure at that back where I'm going to get that first wrap so everything's under a lot of pressure. And I'm going to wrap it down. I'm going to cover the tag end of wire because I'm going to be rubbing my fingers up and down on this thing, and that little tag end will cut you if you're not careful. All that thread is going up through that wet glue and half hitches in the wet glue for durability. You can just kind of get that dry enough. Now you're going to come in with your vice grips, grab that tip top of that wire, and this is going to stay right here this entire video, and it might go like this, but I'm never going to kink these against that wire, or else you could break it if you kink it, kink it, kink it, kink it. You know, by the 10th turn that's going to snap. And you can see this isn't treated in a specific way where I've preened all this back, because it's going to want to twist as you palmer this forward. As you wrap this forward, it's going to twist, and so if you treat it all the same, it's going to get wonky on you. So I leave it the way it is in the round, just however it came out of the brush table. I'm going to use the rotary function, which you don't have to do if you don't have one, and I'm only going to worry about 1/4 of a turn at a time. Preen back those fibers for that 1/4 of a turn, get another 1/4 on there, preen them back, get a 1/4 on there, preen it back, get a 1/4 on there, and I'm going to fight for these small little stages of getting the hair the way I want for that little partial turn. That's it. You can see my vice grips haven't moved once. They've just been anchored down there. The weight of the vice grip plus the weight of my hand, it makes it really easy to hang on to this wire, and it makes this so much more comfortable. If you've tried any other way, this is the way. And so you can see when I built the brush, you know, I left a gap between each section, one section to tie it in, the other to grab it with the vice grips. And I can just tell I'm going to need to keep this open spiraled wrap so that my wraps are not touching each other, but they just have a little bit of gap between everywhere where they touch down in order to fill this hook with the density that I want. So I'm just being aware of that. You will often see me, well, you wouldn't often see it because I ain't going to show you it most of the time, but I will often back up. See, I'll do it right now. I will often back up if I realize my spacing isn't what I want it to be. And you'll see that the brush will now be all preened back the way you want so that it's really easy to work with. And I'm going to open it up back there now. and I'm going to climb right up to the middle. So instead of being in the middle in 10 wraps, I'm in the middle in 5 wraps. And now I'm going to let it get denser right here at the head. I can see I have a bunch of trapped fibers under all this peacock and whatnot. So you just take like a little wire brush. You can use the same brush you used to pick out the dubbing brush when it was on the table. And just clean that up. Again, you're fighting for quarter and half turns. It's not a very, I don't know, majestic thing to watch come together. You know, it's just a small, tiny pain in the butt. That's all it is. Just fighting for it. But if you do everything right, you'll end up right at the hook eye with empty exposed wire. I'm going to cord that wire up just to help strengthen it. 2 turns around, pull up on the vice grips, down with the thread to suck all the slack out of there. Keep tension on the bobbin as you reel up. It's quite tricky. And then get some threads on top of this guy. I'll stand that up. I will clip it off, but I don't clip it. Oh my goodness, man. I don't clip it as flush as I can. I leave a tag on there that I will fold backwards so that brush is just tied in twice. That's just, I don't know. I've always done that. I've been doing that for years. I don't think I ever tried not doing it. You can try not doing it, but I'm not going to be the one to try not doing it. I just always do it. Just do it. And then because this is a black fly, boom, you're good enough. Now sometimes you'll get garbage up in these hook eyes because you can't control all those little bucktail butts and everything that's in your thread. So be a little extra when you put your glue on there. Take a bodkin that you have been beating the crap out of. Where's my bodkin, dude? All right, find your bodkin, then take your bodkin, shove it up through that hook eye, and make sure it's nice and clear. All right, so we got our 25mm shank in here. Gonna grab that in the tip of this jaw system and really crank it down because you're gonna put some pressure on this, man. You don't want that slipping out of there. It'll be quite a pain in the tushy if you've ever tried it. It's a pain in the tushy. But I like to lock the back of the bend so that everything's nice and rigid. Then we'll close up that other R bend here. Put down that solid thread base. And I'm gonna go up the hook eye a little ways and back into that bend a little ways so that the gap between my brushes is very tiny. And I'm gonna put a light thread base over this double wire section because that's a great place to cut your thread here. So I got the super glue right at the base of the strung fuzz. Gonna preen it all back, make sure I have a good clean shank eye. And that is a triple very complex triple articulated musky fly tied out of a Bucktail Dubbing Brush. All right, so that is a double articulated or a triple, you know, hook, shank, shank, extended body, very complex brush, right? We got two different colors of bucktail. We have that dark olive black strung fuzz heads. We have a SF core, which was already pre-blended with multiple colors and different flash, with the gold, with the hackle, with the peacock. I mean, you're talking about some serious custom depth, richness, complexity. That's cool stuff that you could never do just tying. You'd never be able to get all of that complexity in there and have it look seamless and like it was supposed to be here. One of the coolest things you can do, a big old dense triple, you know, sucker silhouetted fly for musky fishing. I'm going to get this wet. I'm going to hang dry it. I'm going to make it purdy. I'm going to use this strung fuzz as a base with some zap goo and posted dome eyes in size medium to throw some eyes on it, just like this guy. You still retain the bulkhead, the post. I cut the post pretty short, but the post still goes in there. You make basically roots with the glue, and these things are nearly indestructible. One of the coolest eyes I have found in the past forever. They're just my favorite eye system. And that's a Freestyle Friday. Again, you could do this, you know, shank, shake, hook is how I have it laid out. And you could have done this brush and applied it to the musky double, the hook shank rig, which is really simple, right? You could do a hook and a 50 millimeter shank, a custom shank, a dropper shank. You could do any of those and just use the brush. All you essentially need is that brush is building 3 sections. You know, you split that into thirds and you can apply it any which way you want as far as the shank layout for extended body fly tying. That's all this is. All we did was extend the body using a hook and a shank behind the lead. And you can swap that order in whatever order you want and play with different shanks. But that's kind of a Freestyle Friday vibe. Really just off the cuff complexity for fun. This is, of course, a modern piece of musky meat. This is kind of a staple just in the industry, is bucktail brushes. This is how I do it. I don't know how everybody else does it, but this is how I do it. I use bucktail that's usually kind of short and trashy that I wouldn't use other places. I build bulk through density, which is not ideal for casting, but it swims amazing, pushes a ton of water, truly serpentines, and literally reacts. The water pushes it and pulls it in a way that is very unique, that you can really only get with a dense fly. And for that reason, the cost benefit, or I guess the negativity of the casting issue, because this is significantly more wind resistant than if you were to tie this same shank layout, same length, same double shank hook with a hollow fly, forget it. I mean, that you could cast that all day. This will be more air resistant, but totally acceptable and worthy on your, you know, typical musky rod. Your 10 and 11s with short, compact, you know, aggressive heads are going to throw this thing no problem whatsoever. None whatsoever. You know, 50, 60, 70 feet. What a sweet river fly, all black and gold. If you knew my water, this will probably be the first fly I fish this spring, if you knew the color of the water conditions that I fish. But let's get this guy wet, throw some eyes on it, let it hang dry. I'm gonna let it hang dry first, then we'll slap some eyes on it. And thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. And yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got.